Um, Welcome back to our Restoring Rural Business series. This is the follow-up. We're calling these the mastermind phone calls after the fact, the Braintrust, because we had a really good webinar on the 1st, Tuesday, June 1st, on Tiny Temporary Together, Traveling in Tech, looking at new business models with Becky McCrae. And got her back today. She said she left a little bit for us, but we also had a couple of interesting questions and wanted to give her a chance to address those. So if you're looking for all the previous stuff and you're catching this after the fact, make sure you go to bit.ly, bit.ly/Restore Rural, capital NC, and that's where you will find all of this material, including the webinar, and then after the fact you'll be able to find this as well. So Becky, I think it's just you and me today, but that's okay. If anybody calls in, we'll take questions, right?
Absolutely, we will do our very best, and I'm happy to be here. Let me get that bit.ly link one more time, because I actually went to pull it up myself beforehand, and I think I put restoring instead of restore.
Yep.
bit.ly/restore rural, all lowercase, and then uppercase NC. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
I guess I should have been more consistent. If we're calling it Restoring Rural, and we put Restore Rural.
See, I knew it was something like that, and I was trying to remember. So now everybody's got that, and I want to make sure that you, Todd, show how I can share screen, because I will have a couple of visuals that we'll share, and I don't see that right on my control view here.
There should be on the float pad, there should be a share. Let me see. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and...
Because I'm not even a panelist or anything. Because it's free conference call, which is really an awesome tool. I can see lots of cases where businesses could use this. I see that now.
Yeah.
I've got it.
There you go. I made you a co-host, so you should be good to go.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's free conference call is one of those ones that for people who, and this is one of those little tidbits that we've all learned, that if you especially as we're starting out, one of the things you talked about the other day for people who are bootstrapping it, if you have to have meetings or calls or anything like that, and Zoom's not terribly expensive, and most of them aren't terribly expensive, but if you don't want to have to worry about the costs right now, it's getting the job done. So...
Yeah, and it's super easy, super lightweight. It looks like something that it would make a lot of sense when you want to share a screen. Like, let me show you how this works. So anybody that's having trouble, if you're trying to show somebody, this is how it works. Look here, let me show you. If you've been frustrated trying to explain, click the little thing. It looks like a hamburger, right? Now you can show. And so inexpensive. I love it. So I do have the questions that you just gave me, Todd, about introverts, which I think is a great question. Do you want to go ahead and share those questions, and then I'll give some thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, we were having the discussion. I was discussing the presentation after the fact with some folks, and they said one of the through lines that we've had through our series has been collaboration, has been working with other businesses, and they said that sounds easy for folks who are really outgoing, extroverted, but if you're an introverted, you're not put yourself out there kind of person, how do you, make those connections? How do you, for yourselves? And we kind of talked about, what are the things that would help somebody as a resource maybe figure out how to do that for themselves, especially in a rural area where if they've either, for people who are either new to the area especially, don't know a lot of folks, and even for folks that may know, and if they're introverted, presumably they don't necessarily know a lot of people.
Yeah. So I've got some thoughts on that. Obviously, of course we have thoughts on that. And I think more entrepreneurs are introverted than we give people credit for, especially in the artistic temperaments. And people assume that, if you are any kind of artist or performer, that you must be extroverted. A lot of times those folks are pretty internally introverted, which I think makes sense. So a few tips that work really well with introverts are make more space for one-on-one. Don't force one-to-many groups, right? So if you're that introvert, don't force yourself to go to the group session where it's going to be super taxing for you, but find more opportunities to do one-on-one connections. A second, and that applies like if you're a supporter, if you're a person who supports entrepreneurs, make sure that in addition to building those group options, that you are making available options where someone can come one-on-one or even on the phone one-on-one. So more distance there. A second tip is informal, more informal choices. So the more formal and structured the thing, the more difficult it can be for someone who's introverted when they thrive better with letting things be about personal relationship as opposed to the formal structure. Related to that is give the questions in advance. If you're going to be asking someone some questions, if you can give the introverts those questions in advance, it's so much easier for them to take a moment, make some notes, and then respond. So if you are the introvert, then you can ask people for the questions in advance and say, I know you'll be wanting to know some things, so please tell me what those things are so that I can be ready for you. So don't be afraid to ask for what you need in advance if that is like, hey, give me the questions so I can write. Another tip is to use more asynchronous communication. So that can be social media, that can be email, it can be text message, it can be instant messenger, anything that's not live audio or live video, and it could be recorded video or recorded audio, like let me send a voice message to you via Messenger or any of the messaging tools, versus let me get you on a call. So any of those options allow you to have a chance to think and reflect before you have to respond. So the asynchronous tools are very helpful for introverted people to give them the space that they need to think about a response before they give it. And so if you are that introvert, don't be afraid to say, could we move this from phone to voice message? Can I WhatsApp you? Or whatever tool works for you. Don't be afraid to ask for asynchronous tools. And my last thing about introverts would be to look to the book Quiet, which is a wonderful resource about being an introvert and about working with introverts. So the book is called Quiet, and let me see if I can get the author's name right quick. And that is, her name is, dang it, what's her name? Susan Cain. Susan Cain. Quiet, the Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. So there you go. Susan Cain, C-A-I-N, like Cain and Abel there. All right. So that's my quick tips on introverts managing collaboration and working with introverts when you're trying to create collaboration.
Yeah, we could probably put together a presentation just on that alone. With all
my gosh, I know.
with the information you came almost off the cuff, if you answered the question before.
I have not answered that question before, but I've kind of paid attention to some of the things that I have learned working with folks that I work with that are a little more introverted. So there's a quick set of tips: more one-on-one, more informal. Give the questions in advance, and use more asynchronous channels.
Those are great.
All right. And then check out the book Quiet by Susan Cain. All right. So we got the whole thing there. Okay. Kind of related to that, talking about collaboration. I have like a whole thing on collaboration. If you don't have a direction, you want to go first.
Oh, you can. That was the only question we've gotten outside, so you're in the lead now.
Okay, and then do we have any questions on the call live? I will be glad to take your questions live rather than just talking.
I will unmute. Let's see. It's Maggie, and I hate to mispronounce it. Is it Inga?
That's it. You got it.
All right. Any questions for Becky while we're here?
Hi, Becky. This is Inga. So Maggie and I are working on the development of business plan and fine-tuning for a business for a market in downtown Wilson, city of Wilson in Wilson County. and looking at, really enjoyed your webinar and talking about how to do, those small steps. And so obviously with a market where we're looking at carrying, right now our thought process is where we've gotten it down to is local produce and local products. So really focusing on North Carolina as local as possible and manufactured as local, if not except for perhaps a few things that we can't get within North Carolina, and really kind of having that. And Maggie can speak more to kind of that, also that market type space. So it certainly gave us a lot of ideas of how to incorporate and have other types of businesses that have products to come within our store, and even perhaps looking for a space that had a kitchen where we could have it as a shared kitchen. But then we were like, okay, we did have some ideas for marketing purposes to go into our local farmers market in order to do that market analysis, what is the feedback from people and things like that. So taking those type of small steps, but we were having a challenge of like, hey, is there something that we could be as a retailer of local products like doing mini steps? We kind of got stuck there.
Okay. So great points. And Inga, I remember your name from the call. And I love this example here of doing the local market. So tell me just a bit more about the plan for the market. Is it intended to be in a bricks and mortar space and like a permanent year-round business?
That was the current thought and business plan is to be brick and mortar in downtown, and Maggie does a great job on kind of the elevator speech of like that, coming back to that community, small town market feel also, where we want people to feel like it is an extension of their own home in the sense that they will have some seating. We would like to have people to be able to know their name and, when they walk in the door.
We'll have a coffee bar. Hi, this is Maggie.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi. A juice bar, potentially, serve some soft serve ice cream. But the store would be, locally grown and home sourced. Again, we would, to reiterate what Inga was saying, we would be carrying local product, i.e. fresh and or, shelf product. But it would certainly be an atmosphere. It would have an old general store feel, with certainly modern technology. But it would, like Inga said, we felt sort of stuck because it would be really hard to be in someone else's space carrying their same product, or having, needing freezers, refrigerators, things like that. So just sort of.
Yeah, and then so that's what we're thinking on the, kind of in the reverse, in the sense of, making space for, the wall space for artists, or certainly we were thinking also of having, meet the farmers or meet the products where we have people come in with their products, but that we were carrying. But we could certainly look at it where it's, perhaps where they have space in order to showcase their product, or that find a brick and mortar space that has a kitchen component where it can become a shared kitchen, where people that give them other businesses opportunities to use the shared kitchen. But besides the farmers market where we're doing marketing and kind of introducing ourselves, we were stuck on how to do these small steps when it's a retail type of operation that we're looking at.
Okay, great. That gives me a much better feel for it. Thank you very much, Inga and Maggie. I appreciate you both sharing those details. I love this plan. I love the idea of it being that personal connection and the type of feeling that we associate with the old-timey stores, and yet putting that modern juice bar, coffee bar spin on it. So before we go straight to the bricks and mortar year-round, and take that big leap, the small steps that we can take, I do love the idea of going to the farmers market to do market research. First of all, you'll find lots of producers there who may want to have a year-round representation someplace. And you'll also find lots of idea of what things are selling well and what things maybe don't sell as well. And then there are all kinds of things that are related but don't really fit in a farmer's market, right? So you'll come up with some ideas of things that could work as a complement to your market, but aren't really farmer's market sort of things. So, like, the seating, the coffee bar. The coffee bar is going to end up selling lots of other stuff that you wouldn't really put at the farmer's market. So the small steps that I can see for this are to start with pop-up booths or, the table at an event sort of thing, where you might have only a few products, but it would be this broad selection of things that you have available where you're testing that market. So as you know that there's going to be an event, you could set up there and use the table as a way to run market research, but also a way to conduct conversations with people so that you can say, oh, we're starting a market. We're working towards a market. This is going to be an actual place. So those conversations become incredibly valuable and are almost as much of a reason to do it as selling the actual product. So you start with temporary at events. You can do tents. You can do sheds. You can do a borrowed building just for 1 month. We talked about the 1 month business. Maybe you could just say, all right, how could we take this empty building? We're going to borrow it or rent it at a low cost for 1 month, and we're just going to set up in here and pretend like we're a market. Even though we're nowhere near ready to launch, what we're doing is testing out different layouts. We are trying different ideas. We're putting in some different, you might have to bring the coffee and serve there, or there's no coffee, So, and then you've got all these tables, and you've borrowed some shelving units from people, and you hit the garage sales, and you got some cheap shelves, So you do that kind of a temporary setup. So we have booths at events. We have set up a tent on an empty lot. We have borrow an empty building. And all of those steps move you closer to finding out what's going to work in your community. And another thing that you might consider doing is either locating inside another business, which you talked about, but I'm not sure that that's going to work as well, because what we're talking about is, by its very nature, this market could be, it's going to have that wide variety of different sellers represented. And I think it's a small step from there to making more opportunities for those to be more real little businesses inside your business. So it's one thing to say, go to a producer and say, all right, well, we're going to buy or take on consignment, 4 cases of your chutney that we're going to sell. And then it's a different thing to say, you make all these things. Do you want to come and use a shelf? We have a shelf here that is like the, featured producer of the month that we do all the time. So you could have a shelf. You could actually set up a booth area and make that available to somebody to be a pop-up for a weekend or a month or for longer. If you can't fill the entire building as you first start your actual bricks and mortar location, then allowing other people to fill in booths helps you instantly multiply the full feeling within that building, so that it doesn't look like, okay, so it's like 2 gals on a card table. Okay. So the more you can pack in there, the better it feels. And we have this really in small towns where it's like, well, we only have so much stuff. And so, businesses that feel sparse don't have the same kind of feeling that we're looking for, which this is that packed, full, old-timey market. So use your vendors to help fill up your space. Art on the walls is a natural connection for that. Use temporary events to bring more people to your location. So if that's on your sidewalk or in a parking area nearby or in an empty lot next to your building, if you've overflowed your space, then use your outdoor space as well, partially because that helps you be conspicuous, doing great stuff, and other people will be attracted to what's going on. And that's why I say, starting with the booth at the event gets you to do conversations. If your first iteration of this market is in an empty lot with a bunch of little pop-up tents, that's going to attract people to your conversation. And once you're in a bricks and mortar building, make sure your sidewalk is always crowded full of interesting stuff within the legal and safety limits of what you can do on the sidewalk. And
Right.
be always so conspicuous of, wow, look at this activity. I really want to get involved in that. How did that all strike you?
Yeah, I think that definitely helps and gets the brain juices flowing to think about different ideas. But that's where, that was the sticking point of figuring out how to do the small steps when our goal and concept is to have the brick and mortar large space.
Yeah.
But great, thank you.
Awesome.
Becky, can I add one quick thing?
Absolutely, please do.
Because I've got some good examples that they can take advantage of. One is, we've got one that started, and I think it's another natural one. I don't think you mentioned, but it goes back to what you were talking about the other day. Of there are a lot of folks that are starting. They get the vendor relationships, and then are doing, in most cases, because they're not doing online sales. And so some of them are doing either gift baskets or whatever, things where they can either justify a subscription service or something that meets the need online in part, where ordering can just be done online virtually, so there's no overhead with the space. But then you can start building up the reputation of pulling those products together. So I know a couple of examples that have done that. But most of the ones that I've seen, and probably one of the better ones, and it's probably not too far, and I don't know if they'd consider you competition because you're far enough away from them, is my counterpart in Sampson County worked with somebody that's it sounds very similar. I was going, I got to look it up. They're called Simply NC, and it's a fantastic model. For you all to look at. I don't know if you've seen it or if you get a chance, but I would definitely take a look at them.
We did look at that, and that kind of got some ideas flowing too. Is some complementary services, So Simply NC, we have looked at their website.
So, and there's a bunch of those, and I always tell folks too is find somebody that's not in your service area and just go pick their brain, because usually they'll be willing and able to. But a couple of the other ones I've seen are like the gift box, gift basket kind of thing too. Like I said, that lends itself to being very easily online, but at the same time would make it easy for you to go to some of these smaller scale events, even without product necessarily, and still try to garner some business and some. I love Becky, trying to figure out where you want to go with the model, especially if you're trying to keep it local with a brick and mortar. So,
great, thank you.
I'll be quiet now.
That's some really good ideas. The gift basket and subscription box model makes perfect sense. That's something that could be launched starting now. When you get to the stage of we have some vendors or, we're starting on this, the subscription box model would be one that in the gift baskets as well would be one that could start long before you had a permanent space and could continue to be an income source even as you got established into your formal space. So love that idea. I think subscription boxes is one of the least tapped and most promising business models for rural businesses in the retail space. Absolutely.
Great.
And totally agree on find somebody doing something similar and just say, let's sit down and talk.
Yeah.
There's so much. Entrepreneurs learn best from each other. We know this. So the opportunity to get with somebody, find out if there's an association or a group or just an informal, is there a Facebook group that you can sneak up into of somebody that's, that's people running these kind of businesses so that you can learn from them and connect with them. So great ideas there.
Thank you both.
I'm writing that down. That was a good idea. Look for the associations and the Facebook groups. All right. Do we have anyone else on the call that I should stop and see if they have a question?
No, it's just us right now.
Okay, I'm going to do one more thing that I have prepared, and then we'll see where we are after that. So this one is about building the community first, and especially when you're trying to do something that's going to involve a group of people trying to use a shared space or a shared facility, such as the shared kitchen, the shared market, the little booths to pop up inside the market, for example, or any of the examples we talked about in the previous session. The best advice is to build the community first. I actually started a co-working space in my nearby big town, which is Alva, Oklahoma. It has a population of just under 5,000. Or just over 5,000. And so I was thinking of ways to do that. So I talked with someone I knew who had started a successful space in a big city. And he said, build the community first. Find the community of people who want to use it, get them in the habit of working together, and build that community first. And that was absolutely the best advice that I didn't follow. So I had arranged for a space to use, but I hadn't done that preliminary work of gathering the crowd and having people who wanted to use it. So that space did not last very long. So I have remembered that advice ever since. I provide it to you free. Learn from my mistakes and from that great advice that my friend Derek gave me. So how could you start gathering your crowd to build community? I want to give you an example that my colleague Deb turned up, which was a woman named Kristen in Belle Fourche, South Dakota, wanted to grow the arts community in her town. So what she did is she just posted on Facebook and said, hey, who are the local artists and the crafters and the people that make jewelry? So she just asked, and it generated a lot of discussion. People spoke up and said, I'm a quilter, or, oh, here, you should know about my friend who does paintings, right? So they tagged other people and mentioned other people. They tagged themselves by speaking up, and it was a great way to begin that conversation, to bring people together and gather that crowd. And so that's a really smart first step if you're thinking of creating an art space, a co-working space, a market kind of space, a shared workshop sort of space, anything like that, then start by building the community. So you can do meetups in person when that is feasible. You can do online groups when that works better. You can do backyard get-togethers, anything that will help bring those folks together, and then start doing the temporary events that get those people in the habit of the thing you want them to do in the future. So for a co-working space, that would be invite everyone to bring their laptop and we're going to work together, whether that's at the library or you find a cafe that's friendly or even borrow an empty office inside of a larger business. If that is for the kind of fresh market, produce market that Inga and Maggie are talking about, then you want to do the sort of pop-up events where people come and set up their table, or people come and display their produce for sale, and get in the habit of doing the thing that you want them to do together so that you're ready and you can just transfer that right into the building. If you're wanting to do a crafting sort of space or an artist sort of space, then hold those crafternoons or those get together and make things meetups so that you have that pipeline built for your shared space. And I think that brings us right to the half hour. So if there are, let's see if there's any other questions or comments.
Anything else from Maggie? Inga?
Yeah, we're good. I think that really helps us, kind of see it from this perspective when the goal is a brick and mortar space. So very good tips. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The only other thing I'd add to what Becky was saying, which she kind of was getting at, is not just building that audience up, but making sure that you have a well-developed, especially as your guys are going for a brick and mortar, to make sure you have a good marketing plan developed, especially out of the gate, and even as cheap as you can keep it, you still want to make sure you have it so that it's, you're working it and finding what works, what doesn't work, because so many die on the vine because they just didn't get it out there sufficiently. So
there's a piece that goes with that. That's a great lead in, Todd, because definitely have your marketing plan in place. And if you're going to involve this community of other businesses with your business, tap their networks to do the marketing, because each one of them is connected to lots more folks. And so if you are connected to, say, 30 people who are vendors or providing produce for your market, that's 30 people that you can tap their networks to help market the market as a whole. So when you're making that marketing plan, tap your community to leverage their networks to reach more people.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, so now we're going to do fun stuff until March. Is that all right?
You're good. I think
Okay.
you cleared the board, so.
All right. We're going to go here. That's the one. And we want to share just this. Make sure I've got the right thing going here. There we go. So we're going to talk about shed businesses. Is the share working correctly?
I see it. So
You see it. Okay. So
yep.
All right. Okay. So it doesn't show me that we're going to trust it shows you. Okay. So I want to tell you about shed businesses. I love shed businesses. Shed businesses are so awesome. And this one is called Nacho Business. And I just want to emphasize, I didn't name it. I'm just going to tell you about it. So Nacho Business is this little shed in a parking lot. And they were in South Dakota. And they made nachos on site, which is not hard to do. You've seen that done at every concession stand you've ever visited. And they also did cheesesteak sandwiches. Now, they got the cheesesteaks from a nearby restaurant that was a full-service sit-down restaurant. So you could buy a cheesesteak, you can go sit down and eat the cheesesteak, or you can come here and do drive-through and get cheesesteaks, which I think is awesome as well. And he did really awesome nachos, which is great. But the point of all of this is it doesn't take nearly as much capital to start the nacho business in a shed as it would to start an entire new restaurant. So don't feel like you have to be restricted to starting full size when you can start little tiny and still be a perfectly valid business, as well as if you have a large business, look for ways you could tap into small outposts to reach a whole new group of consumers that you might not reach otherwise. The guy that ran this, he should have taught marketing classes because, Deb and I pulled up here, we bought some nachos, and the way he delivered them, this guy was a natural marketer. He fills up your, he makes the nachos, he hands them out to you, and he says, feel that. Isn't it heavy? How much it weighs, right? So you're like feeling how much it weighs on your hands. Like he has crammed this box full of nachos. All right. He says, open it up. Does it look good? Are you happy with how that looks? I can fix it if you want it differently. You need more jalapenos? Right. So he's walking you through your satisfaction before you ever leave. Smell it. How do those smell? It smells like nachos, right? Like they smell delicious. So, he walks you through all of the sensory bits of being satisfied with your nachos before you leave. So really a great marketing story, but he's in a shed in a parking lot. Okay. Next, so this idea of using sheds isn't restricted to just food, and it's not restricted to just in a parking lot. And they don't have to be, nacho business is not the most upscale business in the whole world. It's a fairly basic business right there. But these other sheds that I'm showing you, this a little more, fancy-looking little shed, this is in Hyannisport. And so it is an uptown sort of thing in Hyannis, Massachusetts. I guess not Hyannisport, it's in Hyannis, and it's alongside the harbor. So they are a tourist attraction. They're just maybe 100 square feet. They have painters and photographers and jewelers and anybody that makes and sells the kind of thing. It's, in fact, you have to apply because they have so much competition to reach to display in these. And in fact, over the first, I want to say 5 years of the program, they sold over $1 million out of these little sheds total. So that's a nice boost for the sales tax for the community. And you can see that they are reasonable looking, and they are, because there are a group of them, then they look like they belong there. So I think that intentional look also helps. And I can see why there's big competition to get into these, because there's probably a lot of tourists make it down to the harbor, and it has turned into a really great program. If you're worried that maybe your community won't approve of adding sheds for businesses, if it's going to be a sticking point with code enforcement, or you think maybe that the city council or someone, whoever's in charge of such things, would object and say you shouldn't put these up because they won't look good. Of course, you can show them the picture from Hyannis because that shows them they can look good. And the other trick is to use the nonprofits. So this picture is from Cleveland, Oklahoma, which is not as big as Cleveland, Ohio. It's a small town. And right at the edge of the library parking lot are these two sheds. And they are sheds. You can see they were backyard sheds until they got drug in here. And that is running a nonprofit, like a Friends of the Library kind of program, where they sell used books in the parking lot, next to the parking lot, next to the library. And they use the money to support the kids' after-school reading program. And I'm telling you, people may object to your for-profit businesses, but it's going to be really, really hard to be the city council member who objects to the kids' after-school reading program.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is the friendly book browser. That's one of my favorites. All right, so this next story, this is how you could use sheds to help fill in a gap in any community. This is in Tynesta, Pennsylvania, and it's a population of about 500. So you can see that we're up against the edge of the foothills in Pennsylvania. So we're foothills on one side, river on one side, national park on one side. So that means that there's not lots of opportunities for growth in this community. They have to work with what they've got. And the population 483, the lot that you're looking at, that was one full block of their downtown on one side of the street, and it burned. So they lost their business fronts all along there. And they spent about 10 years. The Industrial Development Authority ended up with the lots, and they tried to get developers in there and said, please replace our downtown buildings. Of course, they couldn't get anybody to do it because they're a population of 483 and hemmed in on three sides. So this one side of their downtown, this one block, sat empty for over 10 years. So they tried to figure out what to do. And they decided to do a market village. So here's their redevelopment. This is another view of that lot, just from the other end. You can see they're going to do the market village. That's the plan, and that they have just started on the dirt work in this picture. But you can see that little red house with looks like a little church building back there in the background. So they did the dirt work to set it up, and this is what it looks like today. There's that little church in the background, and here's the shed businesses. Now this is years into the process, right? Initially it was just the little driveway or the little walkway with the gravel and a bunch of sheds. But now they've been able to add a local organization added the gazebo, another group added the play area. There's some porta potties around the corner with a hand washing station, and it's so awesome, right? So it's not just like sheds. They have these little false fronts on them, so they look like little downtown businesses. If I was going to suggest any one change, it would be like put them right down the sidewalk so that it looks like little downtown buildings that you're replacing. which I think would be even better. And you could still have a play area around back, or you could make a second, as small as sheds are, we could have two fronts, right? Like they could sit back to back, and we could have a whole second alleyway up the back of more business fronts. So really it's simple, and you may not be able to read it, but there's a little sign on the trash can that says, "Enjoy free wireless internet, courtesy of Armstrong." Wi-Fi. They put Wi-Fi on the thing, which I think is super smart, super smart. And so there's some actual picnic tables. There's the gazebo. There's places to sit and wait while the wife shops or the husband shops. And I say husband because down at the end is the antique angler. There's a guy doing a rock shop, right? There's places for guys to hang out as well. And these little sheds are really simple. This picture is from the Forest County EDC, and it is an earlier picture, and you can see where this is before they had the back when they had the picnic table sitting right there. But we've got Amish jams, jellies, and salsas. We've got the local winery has a storefront in here. At the far right is the bakery, which is actually based in a nearby town. And so there's a picture from inside the little bakery. They bring fresh baked goods every weekend. The bakery's not going to open a second outlet here, like they're not going to have a whole storefront, but they can fill a shed. So that gives them an additional, new business in town, a new service that they otherwise could not have. And then the local makers that expanded, that picture is inside the pottery studio of a couple who started initially in one of the sheds making pottery and selling it. But they grew too much, and so they had to relocate into they bought a house so they could have a big garage so they could use the garage for their pottery, so they grew up. And then this is a back view of the sheds. So you can see they're just sheds, they really are just sheds. And they've got the little fronts on them. They're so cute. And then this gal that you see in the other picture, she was such a sweet gal, and she's on her third round of cancer treatment, she told us. She makes doll clothes and other fabric stuff when she's feeling up to it. Now, she said she couldn't hold a regular job because she just doesn't feel up to it all the time. But most weekends she feels good enough to come and set up and sit in her chair and sell. And anytime she feels up to it, she makes things. And so she can sell doll clothes to little girls and make little girls smile. And she can sell, like I bought a set of placemats because she sells little kitchen stuff. And, I'm sure that's economic development in the fact that she's still contributing to the community. It's probably community development. But I just think it makes perfect sense for a community to provide opportunities for your people to do what they're able to do and to be part of the community in doing it. Miller, South Dakota
What was the name of that community?
Tionesta. Let's see if there's a picture that's where you can read it. You might be able to. Okay. Tionesta. Now the locals just say Ty-nesta real quick, but and not with my accent. They have you probably know their accent better than I do. So this one is Miller, South Dakota, and it is they heard that idea. They wanted the high school kids who have a group that it's their job to do interesting stuff in their community. They used that idea, but they didn't want to buy sheds, so they went to the guy who sells sheds and borrowed them just for the holidays. They said, we want to set up little businesses inside your shed. And the guy was so smart. He said, you bet you can. He made a little fire ring that has his business logo on it and set that out and set up a fire. Smart guy. One of the pop-up businesses was the photo booth. Sit down and get your photo made with our props. There was a baked goods. There was Asian fusion cuisine restaurant set up in there, which I think is the most awesome thing I've heard in a week. They called it the Cozy Cabin Christmas, and what they learned was it was really, 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 really cold. So they did it again in July, called it Christmas in July, and still keep doing it to this day. And the guy that sells sheds is still on board. So, and that, you know what? They didn't buy any sheds. They just did it. So I'm thinking for your market, go borrow the sheds from the guy that sells sheds.
Yeah.
I mentioned in the talk on Tuesday, I talked about Pascagoula, Mississippi, did a tiny business village using tiny houses. They were actually given those. They were Katrina cottages, so they were the temporary housing after Hurricane Katrina. And they ended up with ownership of 17 of these cottages, and they built a little deck for them to sit around. And they put them on the big dirty lot down by the railroad tracks next to downtown. So they're all less than 1,000 square feet, but it has really turned into a big development tool in that a whole group of people who otherwise could not be entrepreneurs are able to be an entrepreneur in 1,000 square feet. So they hold those festivals. I showed you the picture of the festivals that they do out in that open green space where there were all those little pop-up tents and the little van, and people are selling stuff right there, and that gives them more potential businesses. Cleveland, Ohio did this with shipping containers. Tulsa and Las Vegas are doing it with shipping containers. So, you know, this is a flexible model, and I just love it. That's the models. This is a great spot. We've got about 13 minutes left. Anybody got questions for me?
I was just going to add, got to one of the things that you mentioned the other day, and you see this all the time in areas where I'm know pretty well, is that a lot of cosmetologists who do any sort of cosmetology, hair, whatever it is, in rural areas, will do a shed. They'll get the shed and they'll just put it in their own yard because it's not going to cost them anything. It's not getting in anybody's way. It doesn't cause any of those issues, and because they're a client-based service, they can afford to only have it open when they need it to be open.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a great model, but it does get back to especially if you want to be in where there's traffic, it does come back to trying to make sure you can work with the town or the municipality or whatever it is you're dealing with.
Or be outside of town. Which is another thing. I'm going to show you one more picture because it's just so cute. This is for the traveling business model. And I mentioned that I had seen a guy that did a sharpening. He would sharpen your saw or whatever you needed sharpened, your lawn tools, anything that has a blade to it. His name's Leo. He's from Richfield, Kansas. And I actually I talked about mobile services and mobile businesses, and a woman came up to me and said, "You should see my husband's trailer." And then she sent me the picture. I'm like, ooh, I have seen Leo around because he's actually not that far from me. They take this and they park it like in the hardware store parking lot. And I'm telling you what, this is good for the hardware store, right? Like people show up to get something sharpened, and while Leo is sharpening, they can go inside and buy more tools. So this is such a smart thing. I just love it. So that's got to be the cutest mobile business that we've seen all week. And then along with that, let's see if I have one more picture here. Sue was her name. She sent me that picture. This is the other mobile retail picture. Katie Cassian sent me this from North Dakota. That's Katie there in the picture. This little trailer is a women's clothing and accessories store, and it is parked at the lake in North Dakota. So there is no standard population there. It's at the lake, but they're taking advantage of where the people will be gathered up in North Dakota. And what a cool humble is right? Like that's what it is. It's a little travel trailer.
Great.
Becky, that reminds me of one that we had here locally, and I've seen a lot of those in recent memory at a lot of events and festivals pre-COVID, and they're starting to come back around now, of course. But we had a gentleman who's also local he was from Sampson. He and his wife had started doing a mobile boutique, and what he would do is buy old chip trucks that the Lays and those guys, those big boxy trucks.
Like a bread truck, like a Frito-Lay truck. Gotcha.
Yeah, he would buy those, and they converted it over, had a little dressing room, had air conditioning, and he did some of them, and he told me at the time, he said if I could turn it around and get more of these trucks, he said we could actually turn it into a standalone business by itself. He said because he said the profitability of it was so good.
Yeah.
That they were looking at it for their retirement option down the line. This was about a year or two ago, pre-COVID. Like I said, he saw the value in it, but like you said, it's also it's dependent on the events and making sure. But and we do a lot of stuff with that around here because there is in most communities there are the festival circuits, the event circuits that vendors will roam throughout the year, and that's where they're doing most of their business.
Yeah, I have another festival event circuit business example here, and this is the laser tag. I actually ran into this. They're sitting at the base of the water tower in Cosmos, Minnesota. Population under 1,000 by a long shot. And so I don't know where laser tag is based out of, but this is where we saw them. And so they've got all these inflatable things for people to hide behind, and they've got the laser tag vests and the laser guns so that you can play laser tag. I was most amused not by the wooden crate that was inflatable or the tanks or the piles of tires that were inflatable. I was most amused by the inflatable hay bale because we were in Minnesota. I was like, I swear we could find a hay bale. That should not be that hard to find. But they were at the festival there. Cosmos was having their space-themed festival because their name is Cosmos. But that's absolutely a business that would never make in one small town. It might be really hard if you're in a town of a few hundred people to have full-time year-round laser tag, but you could hit the festival and event circuit and be everywhere. So I just loved that example. Of course we took pictures.
Yeah, those are great. Now it's like, I want to do a bunch of different mobile and businesses. It's like, wow, that's so fun.
Oh my gosh, these are such fun examples. So I've thrown the business models back up on the screen there in case you have not screen captured or shot it with your phone. These are the models. Just the tiny, keep things really, really small. Make sure you start with the temporary. So anything that is in the tent, in the borrowed building, in the parking lot, I'm not going to do it forever. We're just trying it out for now. Definitely do things as together as possible so that you are building up on critical mass, so that you tap everybody's networks to help promote the thing, so that it's not just, okay, I have to do all this work myself. Think of ways you can be together with somebody else and split the cost of overhead, split the cost of equipment, and split the work of marketing and reaching more people. We just had a lot of fun with the traveling businesses, and you remember the big blue dog that we talked about on Tuesday. Great examples of businesses that can move around and take advantage of more than one market to add up to enough to live on. And finally, the tech-enabled. We haven't talked a ton about tech-enabled today, but we did talk, as we talked about the working together as introverts, we did talk just a little bit about using asynchronous communication tools, lots of different communication tools to make things as easy as possible for everyone's different communication styles. But take advantage of all of the apps that bring new abilities to your business that used to be things that were extremely expensive, extremely difficult to accomplish, and really hard to access from a rural area, is now on your phone. I think that's just the most amazing development through my career in business, is the wonderful abilities that technology has given us to just instantly accomplish things that were very difficult before. So don't neglect those in your business. And as AI has enhanced those tools, it's making it even easier for us to leverage the ability of technology to do so much more with our businesses without ever having to leave our small town homes that we love. So those are the 5 innovative rural business models. And Todd, what else should we cover? I think
you've got it all. I appreciate Maggie and Inga being here with really great questions. I mean, what they're focusing on is really right in this wheelhouse. So it's great that they were able to join us today.
We really appreciate all of your
Very
knowledge.
much so. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So nice to tap into a wealth of knowledge.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, Becky, you're going to be back. You're going to be back in August, and it ties in with a lot of this, which is the new Shop Local. So
yes.
for those of
my
you
gosh.
who catch this after the fact, hopefully either on the website or at the bit.ly site, bit.ly/Restore Rural NC, capital NC. If you catch it there, make sure you catch us back in August. Becky will be this first Tuesday in August. First Tuesday, correct? Not incorrect.
Second
right?
Tuesday.
Second Tuesday. That's right. You had to make
I did
a change for
Sorry.
it. Second Tuesday in August for Becky on the new Shop Local. So
Gosh, that's going to be, oh my gosh, that's going to be so good because the market has really matured, and just saying shop local, support our businesses is not effective anymore. So we're going to talk about what is effective now.
All right.
So is the website restoreruralnc.com that we can sign up for this, or
it's bit.ly. It's bit.ly, bit.ly. And, well, the links are all there for once you get there for the specific days coming up. So.
Yeah, that's where they're focusing on the rural this summer. All right, excellent. Thank you. We will check that out.
Right.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks again, Becky.
Thank you.
Really good stuff.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
fabulous afternoon.
Take care.
Thanks. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good day.
You too.